parsha this week is Parshas Mishpatim, which means laws, and indeed it has many laws. There are 53 different mitzvahs in this parsha, of which 23 are positive mitzvahs and 33 are what we call the mitzvot lo taseh, the negative commandments. What I want to do today is speak briefly about one of them and then transition and talk about the Beis Hamikdash, a topic that I've been researching a lot into lately. So the mitzvah of Bikurim is the mitzvah of bringing one's first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash to give to the Kohanim. And the pasuk says, the first of your first fruits of your land you shall bring to the house of Hashem your God. Reshit Bikurei Admatcha Tavi Beit Hashem Elokecha. And this only applied to the 7 species of Israel, which was, as we know, 5 specific fruits and then wheat and barley. And one would tie a piece of straw around them when they saw they were ripening, so that they would know which were the first ones to ripen, and later on bring them to Yerushalayim and give them to the Kohanim that were on duty that week. I say duty that week because the Kohanim, as the Leviim, were divided into 24 groups, and each one would serve in the Beis Hamikdash 1 week at a time, and then go home, and another group would come, and later in the year they would come back and do another week of service in the Beis Hamikdash. So that's very briefly about that mitzvah. There's much more that can be said, but I really wanted to talk today about the Beis Hamikdash, but that was a good introduction because that mitzvah in our parsha pertains to the Beis Hamikdash. You know, in 120 years, we're told in the Gemara that we're going to be asked a few questions when we get above. And one of them is going to be, Tzipita Ligeula, did you yearn for the redemption? Did we actually yearn for the Mashiach to come and for the Beis Hamikdash, the third temple, to be rebuilt? And we're told one of the ways to yearn is to learn about it, because you can't really yearn properly for something that you don't know about or that you don't know what you're missing. And hence began my interest to learn more about the Beis Hamikdash. So here is a picture, let's move the camera, of the Beis Hamikdash, and surrounding it, the Har Habayit, the Temple Mount. I don't know the specific dimensions, but it's quite large, as you can see. And what I want to point out here is, here we have the north side of the Beis Hamikdash, the south, the east, and the west. So of course here on the west is where we have the Kotel Hamaravi, the western wall as we know it today, that we hold so precious and so dear. And the Temple Mount, the Har Habayit area, had a level of holiness to it, Kedusha, but not the same as the Beis Hamikdash itself. And here in the front is what was called the Ezrat Nashim, the women's area. And this area was called the Azara. And I just wanted to show you this picture so you could see the Har Habayit, how magnificent and large this area was. And of course, all surrounded by a wall. But I want to show you now a close-up picture. Here we are. Okay. Here is a close-up picture. Let's move the camera. Okay. So first of all, we have here again the Ezras Nashim, and here in the Azara, it was divided into different sections, and we can't really see, but here in the middle would have been the main Mizbeach, the main altar, and here in the Heichal, in the back of the Heichal was the Kodesh HaKadashim, the Holy of Holies, and in the front part would have been the menorah that was lit every day, the golden altar for the incense, the Ketores, which was offered twice a day, and the table for the showbread, where they put the showbread on it once a week. It was baked and put on once a week. There were 16 different chambers throughout the Beis Hamikdash, which housed different items and different functions. Here are some of them. There were 4, one in each corner of the Ezras Nashim, the women's section. Here is another few. There was some in this division here, in this wall, and even underneath it. And here is yet another one. This one was the Sanhedrin Hagadol, the great Sanhedrin of 71 judges, 71 judges rather. And this was the smaller Sanhedrin of 23 judges. And there was yet another area that housed another Sanhedrin of 23 judges. And I'm going to tell you what some of these chambers held. So, one of them held the instruments, because we know that the Levium would sing during the time the Karbanos was sacrificed. So one of them held all those instruments. One of them held the clothing of the Kohanim. The Kohanim, each group wore different clothing, and when they weren't there, it was locked up in a cupboard, so there had to be 24 cupboards for their clothing. One of them was the chamber of the vessels, because 93 different vessels were used every day in the Beis Hamikdash. One of them was the chamber of the Ketores, the chamber of the incense. It held the incense. One of them was the chamber of the wood. It held all the logs and the wood that were used for the 3 piers that were on the main altar every day. One of them held salt. One of them was the chamber of the bowl. Why called the chamber of the bowl? Because there was a well in that chamber, and they used a bowl to take out the water from the well, and this serviced the Beis Hamikdash on a daily basis. So there was a lot going on in the Beis Hamikdash all the time, a very holy, special place. I thought lastly I would talk about the menorah, something that we're all familiar with because of the story of Hanukkah. So, in the Torah we read the pasuk. Before I forget, I must say that these pictures all come from this book, Bet HaMikdash B'Yerushalayim, and in English it would be the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, written by Harav Yisrael Ariel, and put out by Machon HaMikdash, the Temple Institute. And like I said, this is a Hebrew version. I think it's a wonderful book. They also have a museum in the Old City that is well worth visiting. They are devoted to educating the public about the Beis Hamikdash, and they have, in the museum, they have recreated many of the vessels that were in the temple that will please God use again in the third temple. And so one can see them and hear all about how they built them according to the Torah's instructions. And this is part of yearning for the Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt. They actually have given me permission to use their pictures in my talk as an aside. Okay, so here we have a picture of a Kohen lighting the menorah. So first of all, there were 4 lotteries every day in the Beis Hamikdash for the Kohanim because they coveted all the different jobs. So the best and fairest way to divide them out was to have lotteries. So there were 4 lotteries daily. So he would have won it in a lottery. Notice the Kohen's not wearing any shoes. Nobody wore shoes in the Beis Hamikdash. You weren't allowed to have anything intervening between your foot and the ground. He's standing on a stone stool, if you will, because that's what the Torah required, so that you would be higher and it would be easier to light it. Notice the menorah is of gold. You will for sure notice that the branches are straight, and in the Arch of Titus and many other pictures they're curved. The Torah actually doesn't specify which way they're supposed to be, so there is a bit of a difference of opinion, and either one is considered kosher. Here we have a large picture and a small picture. The large picture held 1,050 grams, and the smaller picture held 150 grams. And this is because the Torah says that the menorah should be lit every day. The pasuk says, Ya'aroch oto Aharon, Aaron shall set it in order, me'erev haboker, from evening till morning, lifnei Hashem tamid, before Hashem continually. So it had to be lit and stay lit all night. So 150 grams seem to have been enough to do that throughout the year, and hence they put 150 grams into each lamp every night before lighting. Notice that the wicks are all facing the center. If you see that, they're facing the center lamp, but the wick on the center lamp is facing westward toward the Holy of Holies. And in fact, we're told that the Ner HaMa'aravi, the western lamp, miraculously often didn't go out at all in certain periods of Jewish history. Even though the same amount of oil was placed in it as in the other lamps, it stayed burning much longer than the others. And this, by the way, is the main reason that we have a Ner Tamid in Shul. It's in, as you will honor, of the western lamp that never went out. The interesting thing is, it's not clear, the rabbis it's a debate whether it's the middle lamp or one of the two right lamps that is actually the Ner HaMa'aravi. Even though that means western lamp, it might have been the middle one because its wick was facing westward, or one of the two on the right that were in the most westward positions. But either way, like I said, it miraculously didn't go out in certain periods of history. And more than that, the western lamp was only able to be lit from the pier on the main altar outside, whereas all the others were lit from each other. You would extend the wick from one to the other and light them. The western one had to be lit from the main pier outside. Okay, one last thing. In the morning, the Kohen would come and prepare 5 of them. That is, he would take out the old wicks and any excess oil and then put in new wicks and oil. And only later would he come back again and do the last 2. And this because there's a pasuk in the Torah that says, Baboker, Baboker, in the morning, when he fixes the lamps. And the rabbis say, it says in the morning. We learn from that he should do it in 2 shifts. That is why it says it that way. The Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch talks a lot about the structure of the menorah and all the deep philosophical lessons that we can learn from that. And I should mention the menorah represents Torah wisdom and Torah knowledge. So it was a very important mitzvah to light it. So I'm just mentioning that Rav Hirsch talks extensively about what we can learn from every aspect of the menorah, but our time is up here. So I just want to end and say that at the end of the Amidah, we say, Yehi Ratzon, Sheyibana Beis Hamikdash B'mheira B'yameinu, V'shamna Avadcha B'yira. May it please you, Hashem, that you should rebuild the Beis Hamikdash speedily in our day, and that we should be able to worship you there in awe. And our rabbis tell us that if we yearn for the Beis Hamikdash and learn more about it, then we're saying to Hashem, please, we're ready for it to be rebuilt, and please bring it soon. So hence my interest. I've even been writing some quizzes about it recently, and I hope we'll all yearn more, and please God, Hashem should bring it soon.